Good morning, everyone. Haven't been on the stage for such a long time. I'm trying to get used to it. My very first experience with XR technology, like when we talk about the XR technology, we really talk about virtual reality and augmented reality here. So my experience was 10 years ago on a collaborative project with the architecture professor Vincent Hui at the TMU back in the days. So we created an architecture database supported by, I don't know if any of you are familiar with the augmented reality app. It's called the Leia. And so we created that kind of AR kind of application to support architecture science students to learn the downtown architecture building history and also other related information. This very early experience probably can answer this question quickly. Why should we adopt XR technology? So my simple answer for that is to enhance learning and educational experience. So,
yes.
Okay. What should the academic library do to embrace XR technologies? I think we should think about we should think beyond the technology itself. Although my initial experience with XR is much earlier than the ACRL report in Environment Scan 2021. So they have a very nice section about immersive technology. When I look back and when I look at the report again, I do agree that those 4 recommendations listed in the report. First, library should collaborate with campus partners to support implementation of useful application based on XR. As I said earlier, I completely agree based on my past experience. Second, academic library, I really believe that are the ideal unit to create on the campus to create collaborative space for the accommodation and incorporation of immersive technologies. We'll talk more about the TMU library experience in the detail shortly. Librarians should actively look to supplement instruction with the classroom practices and examples that promote immersive technologies. And it is important to provide development opportunity for faculty and staff. For example, our library's research and residence provide tremendous opportunity not for the faculty and the student, but also for the library. I believe academic library also have a real opportunity to use XR to support their archives, museums, and special collection initiatives. So you will see some really good project example from Michael soon.
Just the green.
Now I would like to share our experience at the TMU library in the past few years, how we adopted, developed XR technologies. In 2015, so we opened up a sort of like peer-to-peer learning-based makerspace. We call it Digital Media Experience Lab. I believe some of you have been to that lab. So where we started providing virtual technology headset to students for them to experience particular VR. And we have observed a very strong interest from students about trying this type of new technology. So back in the day, was still kind of play. That was our experience. However, in 2017, I sort of led the creation of our library collaboratory, which is a interdisciplinary kind of research hub. This is where, and when we started seeing some real development in the research activities related to XR technologies. We have gained a tremendous understanding from our engagement with our research community from that. In the last couple of years, we also gained some very good hands-on project experience through our collaboration with the Arkansas Museum and other organizations. At the same time, we also did an environment scan about immersive technology through the library strategic planning process. So Michael and I sort of led that process. All those development and R&D activities led us to seriously consider integrating XR technology into the library's teaching, learning, and the research services and programming. So therefore, recruiting an immersive technology specialist, Michael, becomes so important. And also implementing a collaborative immersive space is also a very natural result of those efforts. Looking back, I couldn't believe we did all of this during the pandemic. So I'm actually more optimistic about our future in this emerging area going forward. So here are a couple of interesting pictures of our Digital Media Experience Lab in 2015. You can tell why my library colleague Stephen Marston was having fun trying the Oculus Rift VR headset. And a couple of students actually, they were standing outside of the glass wall of the lab and curiously watching what's happening in the space. So that's what I called early a playful kind of technology space and sandbox, really critical to students. And here another couple of images in 2018 and 2019. So you can recognize Michael from the picture. So Michael was still a graduate student back the days, and he was a member of the library collaboratory. And so he was just demonstrate his MRP project to our president, Mohammed Lashimi, sorry. So Michael actually was using holographic glasses to demonstrate some sort of kind of 3D kind of object to president. Another picture you can see, I was actually facilitating a graduate student seminar in the library collaboratory, and it was very obvious to me that many graduate students started to embrace VR and AR in their MRP project and thesis. Now I would like to turn over to Michael to talk a little bit more in detail about XR project we have led and participated.
Yep, thank you.
Michael.
Okay, so yeah, and I'm just going to talk about a little bit of some of the actual XR technology we have at the library. And I also just want to explain XR, if you haven't heard of that term before. It's an umbrella term for AR, VR, and MR. So in case there was some confusion, I always like to kind of like clear the air with that. So we've used VR headsets. We do have a lot of drones now with LiDAR capture, IR camera for motion-based interaction, AR development software and devices, specifically Unity and Unreal. Holographic displays is another thing that we work with a lot. I'll show little bits and pieces of how we've used this, but one of the key things that we want to talk about is actually our new 360 VR environment, which you can see in that picture right there. So this is something that we kind of acquired during COVID, and we're actually really excited to talk about it with, and present it here. So,
Sure.
Oh yeah, thanks. Do you mind if I grab that? Thanks. Okay, so so in a second here, I'm going to show a video, but I would like to sort of explain a little bit of what this slide kind of shows. So basically, at the Aga Khan Museum, they have this artifact on display. It's a ceramic bottle. And one of the projects that we worked on with them when we were doing Canada Council for the Arts grant was taking that physical object and using photogrammetry to create a 3D object from it. So very briefly, photogrammetry is essentially the process of taking images of a physical object and then turning that into a 3D model. And so essentially it does provide a level of like greater accessibility in terms of learning about some of these artifacts, which you couldn't normally go to the museum, at least for some people couldn't normally go to the museum to find. But at the same time, in this particular instance, and I'd like to play this video here in a second. Hopefully these videos work. I have like 4 videos, and I was working with the guys out front to make sure they were working. So just, let's see if it's gonna work. It's working? Oh, okay. Sorry, I can't see them. So, okay, so basically what's going on here is there's an image target that I've created, and basically the image target is being recognized by one of our iPads, and so basically there's a 3D model that's projected onto that image target and it tracks it. So the interesting thing about this particular 3D object is on display at the Aga Khan Museum, it's up against a wall actually. So the actual physical object is up against a wall, but it has two unique sides to it. So it actually, in a way, like you can read about the two unique sides to this ceramic bottle, but you can actually see it. So actually by having a 3D model in this context and using AR to actually manipulate the 3D object, you actually learn more. So it's not only more accessible, but it's actually provides a greater level of pedagogy as well. I'm just going to go to the next slide here. Yeah. So here's another another piece of work that I worked on for the Archon Museum, and basically I took manuscripts. So basically a manuscript is like a collection of artworks, and in this particular case it was an Islamic poem. And so basically I took that artwork and I used After Effects and Photoshop to create an animation. And it's pretty basic actually, it's just arrows flying back and forth, but it's supposed to invoke digital storytelling. So again, we used augmented reality in this capacity as well. So if we can play that video. Yeah. So basically what's happening here is similar to the 3D object. There's an image target that's being recognized by the camera. So again, in this case, it's one of our tablets, and basically it recognizes the image target. I pulled the thing away there to show you that the tracking is really good. So as soon as I bring it back, you'll see that it overlays essentially a video actually. So it's not, to be honest, like really what's happening is there's an image target and then there's a video that's overlaying right on top of that image target, and it's just using image tracking to create something like this. So we hope to explore this more in the future, but yeah, I'm just briefly touching upon this for now. And then the next thing we have here is the use of holographic displays. So when I was actually doing my MRP, my master's project, I did use holographic displays quite a bit, and so I wanted to bring that into museums. Like how can we use a holographic display to actually enhance learning in a museum? So in this particular instance, you know, looking at the slide, I wish I actually showed the original artwork, because the original artwork essentially shows how we can learn from 3D objects. So basically the original artwork for this particular 3D model, it kind of looks flat. So and the reason why it looks flat is because a lot of Islamic art tends to be, like when you look at it, you can't really tell the perspective from the person in the foreground to the background. So in order to help with that, I created a 3D model to almost look like a 3D pop-up. And essentially the holographic display is a peripheral-free way of viewing a 3D model to give it depth. So as you can see in my GIF here, it's a video of me going back and forth, and essentially I'm showing how you can see around certain objects in this holographic display. And so you don't need to actually wear 3D glasses or any sort of actual peripheral on your face to view this. And this was during COVID-19. This exhibit was during COVID-19, and we were really encouraged to think outside the box in terms of how we interact with the technology, so that we're not actually physically touching it, because obviously physically touching things are now, a lot of people are not comfortable with that. So another thing, I'm just going to briefly touch about this as well, but it was kind of mentioned in my intro, but we did also experiment in the library. This is actually the collaboratory. And we did have the opportunity to do some volumetric video capture for a Holocaust survivor who was flown out from Calgary. And so that was a great experience. It was about a week, really intense week of filming, but it was a lot of fun, and it was definitely a great experience. So essentially the footage that we captured from this video is essentially going to be, it's for the Dimensions and Testimony project. So basically what that is they take Holocaust survivors, turn them into seemingly holograms using a projection-based system, and then they use artificial intelligence, so you can essentially ask questions to the survivors, and they'll appear virtually in front of you and answer questions based on, to the best of their ability, the artificial intelligence will relate the question to the best answer that is available in sort of the videos that we created. But the main thing that I want to talk about, and I want to just get a little bit more in detail about this, is, as I mentioned before, sort of our VR environment. So I'm just going to kind of briefly go through the capabilities it has, but then I'm going to show some videos about what it actually looks like on the inside. So basically we call it the Immersion Studio. And the Immersion Studio is a full 360 projection cylinder, provides space for collaboratively engage in 360-degree VR content. It does have a surround sound speaker system for spatial audio and 3D sound. And then it allows educators to explore new ways of presenting 360 content. This next point here, I say it provides a safer alternative to view VR content in comparison to traditional VR. So the reason why I sort of bring up this safety concern, which might sound strange, right, is because when you think about, again, I have to bring in COVID here and traditional VR, I'm not sure, I just want to see a show of hands, how many people have tried VR headsets before? Okay, so quite a fair people, but there's still a lot of people here, I would say about 60% who have not tried VR. And one of the big drawbacks with VR, I mean, VR is great for certain types of how we can use it for education, but usually in a classroom, especially in an educational institution, there's like 2 VR headsets for a class of like 60. So what happens when you have to pass that headset between one person to the other and you're cross-contaminating? Are you making sure that you are sanitizing these headsets between uses? So these are a lot of considerations that we have to start thinking about. And so some people are just going to be like, no, I don't want to put that on my face. And that's just the way it is. So in terms of the research, which there is a lot of research done in VR, but we might see we might start seeing a plummet in terms of how we actually engage in VR education. So in this capacity, you don't actually need to wear something on your face. It's sort of a 6 meter in diameter cylinder, and it takes a projection system, 5 projectors on the ceiling, and it essentially stitches a whole seamless image around you, essentially. So it's almost like being surrounded by an entire monitor, I guess, that's curved around you. So it's actually really interesting. Again, I'll show you a video of what that looks like so it gives a better context. But it allows for greater accessibility for 360 content. And then we also recently equipped it with HTC Vive trackers, which I'll show you in a second what that will do. So this is your slide.
Okay, sorry, Michael. Yeah, by the way, you're welcome to visit us if you're interested in looking at what we have done. So let me a little bit about why we selected Igloo Vision as a kind of a foundation for this immersive studio space. And we actually have talked to a few academic institutions about their experience, and such as Michigan State University, the Digital Scholarship Center, and also their 360-degree room initiative. Well, we also researched a few Canadian library, their initiative. I saw Jean-Marc here, so we researched actually visualization wall of Concordia. We look at McGill, we look at Mountain Royal University, a few others. So our conclusion is those visualization initiatives is very interesting, but what we really want to go past the sort of a PR and also sort of like a demonstration or project projection kind of a stage was more about how we truly use this type of innovative technology support the teaching and the learning research experience. And in that sense, we believe the software compatibility and the content creation are essential to make a more interactive learning research experience. So you can see there are a list of universities here. They have used Igloo Vision technology. By the way, I'm not trying to do promotion for Igloo Vision as a vendor, but you just do your own research. There might be other good solution out there, but I think that was the kind of ideal solution and for us. So I'll let Michael talk a little bit more about our selection.
Yeah, so as Fangmin was mentioning, Igloo Vision is the vendor that we chose for our immersion studio, and there's a lot of support for different softwares and APIs. Here's a long list of them. But I want to show just some examples. I'm going to quickly go through this. Here's an example of, this is Hiroshima, essentially after the atomic blast that was in Hiroshima. And so instead of, this is a 360 panoramic image, but obviously this was not created with a 360 camera because that technology didn't exist at the time. But essentially these are stitched images to create a long 360 panoramic that what you see in the bottom actually is sort of what you would actually go, and when you go into the immersion studio, this is how it would kind of surround you. This is also another example of how you can use individual artworks to show this. And then this is actually the example that I want to show. So this is a video that I would like to play now. And just give it a second. There we go. So this is essentially a demo of me using Unity actually. And so I'm walking through a 3D environment here. And so again, this whole cylinder, you see me spinning around a lot. I just want to show how I can see the whole environment around me. But this is a 3D model that I'm essentially walking through. And this is actually a 3D model of renovations of our 4th floor in the library. So I also programmed some interactions with the HCC controllers to pick up, and you can throw chairs, which you'll see me do in a second. Everyone loves that. So I always tell people, hey, if you're stressed out, come and throw chairs in VR. And yeah, so a lot of people like that feature, so I'm glad I have that in there. So I'm going to go to the next slide here. I think, for the sake of time, it's basically the similar example, so I'm just going to kind of blast through this one. But I just want to show how it works within Unity and Unreal. But this next slide here is just, we do have integration support for, we do have, or working with interior design classes and working with faculty to bring the Immersion Studio into their curriculum. And then we also, this is just sort of another slide that I have here just showing the different presentations I've done for various faculty, documentary media, and architecture and engineering. And I just want to kind of end on this, which is like some libraries don't have obviously the capacity to install one of these 3D cylinders or the projection cylinder. So what are some low-cost solutions to VR or immersive content? And so on the lowest end of the spectrum, you have the Google Cardboard, which I'm sure a lot of you have tried out. The tablets for AR 3D environments. And then this last one here is like essentially what you see in the picture on the right, which is you could theoretically, we haven't tested this, but you could theoretically project using 3 projectors, create almost like an extended display to create almost like an immersive environment. So it'll essentially take content and extend it to 3 different monitors or 3 projectors onto 3 different walls. And you could get something similar to what we have, but again, it's not like a seamless circle. So that's it. I don't know if we have time for questions, but we do have QR codes up there if you want to connect with us on LinkedIn. Thank you.
That was mind-blowing. Thank you very much for that, and I invite everyone to connect with both Michael and Fangmin over lunch for other questions and to have them elaborate. It was just fantastic. We have one question here. How much?
Yep, so the question, how much training do you need to get started in the studio? Did you identify interest in faculty members and courses before the studio? So yeah, we did talk to various faculty to identify, I guess, certain needs that they want in terms of actual VR training. But in terms of the training to get started in the studio, so if you are familiar with Unity or Unreal, like if you're at least an intermediate user, I wouldn't consider myself to be an expert in Unity and Unreal, but I know enough to get by, and let's just say that's enough to run the immersion studio. So yeah, I will say because of the software support from our vendor, Igloo Vision, due to their own internal APIs, it's easy to sort of understand. And if you're already working with 3D projects in Unity or Unreal, you can just kind of, or you can take that and easily integrate it to the immersion studio. So
I can take the second part of the question. And so in terms of the interesting faculty members, because you can, if you recall the slide we demonstrated earlier, it's a journey, has been a journey for us. So when we created the library collaboratory, so we actually have more than, before pandemic, more than 200 members. They like 75 kind of full-time faculty members, the rest like graduate students, researchers, and instructors. So it was not difficult for us to reach out to the kind of interesting faculty because we already sort of built a community of researchers already. And I think next week we're going to give interest
PhD students.
to a group of doctoral students from computer science, and in November we just set up like a 2 kind of half a day or like a immersive technology event day for Center for Digital Humanities. So and we have a pretty strong pipeline, and I think the only issue for us is we don't have a lot of people.
Yeah.
Right. So and we want to do more. So I think part of my recommendation is really hire talented grad student like Michael, then keep them as a full-time staff afterwards. Yeah. Okay, thank you very much.